only second in size and intensity of operation to the massive Stewart's and Lloyd's ironstone system at Corby Steelworks. Yet despite its close proximity to the important BR railhead and the fact that its steam locomotives remained in regular use until 1965, its presence went largely undetected by most steam enthusiasts. Roxton was the ironstone railway at its zenith. It boasted a double-track main line with gradient and quarter-mile posts, a separate complex of quarry lines, signal boxes controlling semaphore signals and crossing gates, a motive power stud numbering more than 20 steam locos at one time, and a loco foreman as keen for steam as any man who went there. The gates at Hawley Crossing, tubular steel ones installed in 1962 to replace the wooden originals of 1919, opened to show us a feature of the Oxfordshire Ironstone line that was virtually unknown elsewhere in Britain, the practice of right-hand running. The practice dated back to the days before 1953, when the line was still single track. For left-hand running to become the norm, every train would have had to cross over the up road after leaving the ore crushing plant at Roxton. Too much of a disruption to a railway as busy as the OI. The main line from Banbury to Roxton was built in 1917 with the help of some 250 German prisoners of war, and a cosmopolitan air was still to be found on the line during the Second World War, Italian POWs being sent to work alongside the railway's permanent contingent of Polish quarrymen, and helping the British war effort by doubling production. The general practice was to employ the beefier six-coupled engines on the 5-mile main line, while the branches between Roxton and the quarries were generally worked by the 4-coupled saddle tanks. The 6-coupled engines, stabled in the main line shed at Pinhill Farm, about a mile from the BR sidings, comprised mostly saddle tanks of Hunslet, Peckett and Hudswell Clark build. But there were also 2 big Hudswell side tanks, Sir Thomas and the President, which in the eyes of loco foreman Bill Rogers were a cut above the rest. A spot of fly shunting in evidence here, as one of the Pecketts returns to Roxton with a rake of empties. Though there were exceptions, it became OI practice to bestow boys' names on the mainline engines, while the quarry locos carried names of the female gender. The Peckett we see here didn't quite fit this arrangement, and so underwent an instant sex change from Joan to John. Hunslet 060 saddle tank Frank, the last new engine to be delivered to the ironstone industry in 1958, moves up to the ore-crushing plant at Roxton with a train of side-tipping wagons or dump cars. The load looks modest, but there's 12 tons of ore in each dump car. The 1936 Peckett Grace shows us her Buckeye coupling, with which the four-coupled quarry engines were fitted for hauling the dump cars. On a normal working day, there would be 6 or 7 trips to Roxton, each of 14 empty hoppers, and up until April 1963, the empties from Banbury were always propelled, with the locomotive facing uphill. This wasn't much fun for photographers, but it all changed following a fatal accident in which a Polish quarryman, who'd been riding on the brake pole lodged on a wagon frame, fell beneath the wheels of the wagon. The OI company responded by buying 6 XGWR brake vans from Swindon, which enabled trains to be hauled rather than propelled. At about the same time, 5 of the main line locos were fitted for vacuum braking, which, with the inclusion of about 4 brake-fitted wagons per train, allowed loads to be increased to 16 wagons plus brake van. One of the 2 big Hudswell side tanks sets off from Roxton on the 25-minute journey down to Banbury with a load of fulls. The high point for the OI system came in 1956, when 1¾ million tons of ore was dispatched, principally to Bilston Ironworks, Wolverhampton, but also to furnaces in South Wales, Staffordshire and Derbyshire. Some 190 men kept the wheels turning at Roxton then, but such levels of prosperity couldn't be maintained, and demand fell drastically in the 1960s. In an effort to make economies and move with the times, the Oxfordshire Ironstone Company ran tests with a variety of diesel types and ultimately decided to replace its entire steam fleet with diesels, some 13 Sentinels being bought between 1961 and 1964. The quarry saddle tanks were replaced more or less overnight with the arrival of 11 new diesels in 1964, although steam on the main line clung on for a further 6 months. The changeover wasn't entirely popular with the loco men, some of whom spent their entire working lives with steam and had taken great pride in the turnout of their engines. But in the final years, locos became increasingly shabby. An ex-GWR brake van dating from 1913 was still used on the daily workman's train which ran out to Roxton at around 6 in the morning returning to Pinhill Farm Shed around 3:30 in the afternoon. But nobody could have known how orders would slump, and early in 1967 a much reduced workforce of just 52 men was working a 2-day week, with traffic down to single-line operation. Following the diesel takeover, 10 of the OI's 22 steam locomotives were sent to the Cransley cutting yard at Kettering of Messrs. George Cohen, while a further 7 were scrapped on site by Banbury breakers James Friswell and Son in the autumn of 1965. In July that year came the grim news. Roxton, pillar of the ironstone industry, would cease to operate at the end of the summer.